Lord, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, let it be known today that you are God in Israel. Seize the false prophets of Baal.
A nation was collapsing, not because of war, not because of famine, but because people had forgotten God. And standing against an entire kingdom of darkness was one man, one prophet, one voice from the wilderness. His name was Elijah, a man so fearless that kings trembled when he spoke, a man who called fire down from heaven, a man hunted by queens, hated by false prophets, and carried into heaven in a chariot of fire. But this is not just a story about miracles. This is a story about spiritual warfare, about manipulation and power, about fear, loneliness, and unwavering faith. And at the center of it all stood one of the most dangerous women in biblical history, Jezebel. Israel had turned away from God. King Ahab sat on the throne, but Queen Jezebel controlled the kingdom. She brought with her the worship of Baal, a false god people believed controlled rain and fertility. Soon, altars to Baal filled the land. The prophets of God were hunted down and murdered. Fear ruled the nation. And then Elijah appeared. He did not come dressed like royalty. He came from the wilderness. His clothes were rough. His voice carried authority. He spoke without fear. As surely as the Lord God of Israel lives, there will be no rain for years except at my word. The room fell silent. This was a direct challenge to Baal, the so-called god of rain. Then Elijah disappeared. As the drought spread, rivers dried up, crops failed, and desperation filled the land. Meanwhile, God hid Elijah beside a brook called Cherith. There, ravens brought him bread and meat every morning and evening. Think about that. God used unclean birds to feed his prophet. But eventually, even the brook dried up. Then God sent Elijah to a widow in Zarephath, a foreign land connected to Jezebel herself. When Elijah arrived, he found the widow gathering sticks. She had only enough flour and oil left for one final meal. But Elijah told her something impossible. Do not fear. Make me bread first, and God will provide for you. It sounded irrational, yet she obeyed, and day after day the flour never ran out. The oil never emptied. Not abundance. Just enough. Enough to survive. But then tragedy struck. The widow's son suddenly became sick and died. The woman broke down in grief, believing God had abandoned her. Elijah carried the boy upstairs and cried out to God with desperate prayer. 3 times he stretched himself over the child. Then suddenly the boy breathed again. Life returned. The widow stared in shock and whispered, "Now I know that you are a man of God." 3 years into the drought, God gave Elijah another command. Go present yourself to Ahab. Rain is coming. By now, Ahab hated Elijah. He had searched nation after nation trying to find him. And when they finally met again, Ahab pointed at Elijah and shouted, "You are the troublemaker of Israel." But Elijah answered boldly, "I have not troubled Israel. You and your family have because you abandoned the Lord." Then Elijah proposed a showdown, one that would decide, once and for all, who the true God really was. Mount Carmel, 450 prophets of Baal gathered before the nation. Hundreds watched from the mountainside, and standing alone against them all was Elijah. The challenge was simple: 2 sacrifices, no fire. The God who answered with fire from heaven would be declared the true God. The prophets of Baal went first. For hours they shouted, danced, screamed, and begged their God to answer. Nothing happened. No fire, no voice, no response. As the day passed, desperation took over. They cut themselves with knives until blood ran down their bodies. Still nothing. Then Elijah stepped forward, and with fearless confidence, he mocked them. "Maybe your God is sleeping. Maybe he wandered away. Maybe he cannot hear you." The crowd watched in silence. Then Elijah rebuilt the altar of God using 12 stones, one for each tribe of Israel. He placed the sacrifice on the altar and did something shocking. He ordered water to be poured over everything. Once, twice, 3 times, water drenched the sacrifice and filled the trench around the altar. There would be no tricks here. Then Elijah prayed a short prayer. No screaming, no performance, just faith. "Lord, answer me so these people will know you are God." And instantly fire fell from heaven. It consumed the sacrifice, the wood, the stones, even the water. The crowd collapsed face down in fear and shouted, "The Lord, he is God." In that moment, every lie was exposed. Baal was powerless. God alone was sovereign. But while the people celebrated, Jezebel burned with rage. When she heard what Elijah had done, she sent him a message. "By tomorrow you will be dead." And suddenly, the fearless prophet ran. The same man who stood against hundreds of false prophets now fled into the wilderness, terrified and exhausted. Eventually, Elijah collapsed beneath a tree and prayed to die. "I have had enough. Lord." This is what makes Elijah's story so real. Even the strongest people can break. Even the boldest believers can feel empty. But God did not rebuke Elijah. Instead, he cared for him. An angel brought him food and water and told him to rest. Sometimes healing begins not with a miracle, but with rest. Strengthened by God, Elijah traveled 40 days to Mount Horeb. There, inside a cave, God asked him, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" Elijah poured out his heart. "I am alone. Everyone has abandoned you. They are trying to kill me." Then God told Elijah to stand outside. A violent wind tore through the mountains, but God was not in the wind. Then came an earthquake, but God was not in the earthquake. Then fire appeared, but God was not in the fire. And after all the noise came something unexpected, a still, small voice. Sometimes God speaks loud enough to shake mountains, and sometimes he speaks softly enough that only a broken heart can hear him. God revealed something Elijah never knew. You are not alone. There are still 7,000 people who have not bowed to Baal. Elijah thought he was the last faithful person left, but heaven had been working quietly the whole time. Then God told Elijah to anoint a new prophet Elisha, a young man plowing fields with 12 pairs of oxen. When Elijah placed his cloak on Elisha's shoulders, everything changed. Elisha left behind his wealth, his future, and his comfort to follow the prophet of God. For years he served Elijah faithfully, and when Elijah's final day came, Elijah refused to leave his side. Then suddenly, chariots of fire appeared from heaven. A whirlwind surrounded Elijah. Before Elisha's eyes, Elijah was taken alive into heaven. No death, no grave, only glory. Elisha picked up Elijah's fallen cloak and struck the Jordan River. The waters parted, the mantle had passed. But Jezebel's story ended very differently. For years she manipulated, controlled, deceived, and murdered to maintain power. She corrupted Ahab, killed prophets, used fear as a weapon. But eventually, judgment came. Just as Elijah prophesied, Jezebel was thrown from her palace window. Horses trampled her body, and dogs devoured her remains. The woman who tried to control everyone could not control her own end. And even today, the spirit behind Jezebel still exists, not as a person, but as a pattern. A spirit of manipulation, control, fear, pride. It appears in leaders who abuse authority, in relationships built on domination, in people who use intimidation to control others. Because the spirit of Jezebel is not about gender, it is about control. But the story of Elijah reminds us of something powerful. No matter how dark the world becomes, God always preserves his people. Even when culture turns against truth, even when evil seems louder, even when faithful people feel alone, God is still sovereign. And just like Elijah, sometimes one faithful voice is enough to change a nation.